Thank you all so much for tuning into this talk. I am super excited. Gutted that we aren't able to meet in person, but definitely honored to be giving one of the featured talks at South by Southwest this year. This will be my fourth time participating in the conference and my first time giving a solo talk. I've moderated several panels from 2017 to 2019. So yeah, super excited to exchange and share all of these ideas on music and gaming, one of, I think, the fastest growing areas of the music business with you all today. What I hope you take away from this presentation is that the scope of music and gaming partnerships is not just about original soundtracks. It's not just about sync licenses in FIFA or Madden, NBA 2K, Grand Theft Auto, etc. It really now touches literally every part of the music business. It encompasses in-game concerts, as I'll talk about later in this presentation, in games like Fortnite. It encompasses artists investing in esports teams. It encompasses artists using games as lifestyle branding outlets. There really is so much to explore, and hopefully through this presentation I'll just really scratch the surface of what's possible. As a super brief introduction, I've been covering the intersection of music and technology, including but not limited to gaming, for a little over 5 years now. I've written a lot for publications including Billboard, Forbes, Pitchfork, NPR Music, etc. And I currently run my own music and tech newsletter and paid membership community called Water and Music. As of this semester or this year, I'm also teaching a course on the very topic of this presentation at the Clive Davis Institute of Recorded Music at NYU, which I'm super excited about. And this presentation will include a lot of the kind of concepts and ideas that I'll be teaching students in that course as well. So how did we get here? What is the history of music and gaming and the partnerships between those two industries? I think what's so fascinating about the history of video gaming generally is that as with any other form of media, I think it's inseparable from the history of computers and computing, which is also then inseparable from the history of the music industry, which is very often an early use case and early adopter of a lot of new emerging tech trends. And so it then follows that the evolution of music and gaming kind of coexist and evolve in tandem. I think what's super interesting, if you go back if you go back to the very early stages of the video game industry as a concept, where you had commercially successful video games and video game developers, especially coming out of Japan, so thinking like Sega, Konami, Atari, etc. If you wanted to write music or compose the soundtrack for the games that were coming out of these companies, you really had to be comfortable with computer engineering and hardware engineering in particular. You were also probably employed full-time at the company and working hand-in-hand with in-house engineers and sound designers to actually encode the soundtrack for the game into sound chips like the ones that you see here. Super engineering intensive, very technical, and also very limiting. With a lot of these sound chips, you could only really put a maximum of 3 to 5 sounds simultaneously at any given time in a game. So that kind of leads to be very repetitive, looping, but also very distinct and iconic kinds of soundtracks that we associate with this era of video game music, especially kind of the 8-bit and 16-bit era of games. Fast forward a couple of decades, and the advent of the compact disc and CD technology more generally even makes technologically possible the option to include pre-recorded music into video games. So previously, the quote-unquote soundtrack for a game was not sold separately because it was encoded into the arcade machines themselves. But now you could, thanks to CD technology, you could record a separate orchestral ensemble if you wanted to include that genre of music into your soundtrack. Or you could license pre-recorded music, as is very much the norm nowadays with a lot of major games from existing artists and labels. And so that also then leads to a path of having these soundtracks not just be technologically possible, but also commercially successful. There's no way I'm going to list every single kind of music and gaming partnership in this presentation, but these are just some of the most interesting kind of strands and gaming brands that were very music-centric that came out of the early to late 2000s and early 2010s, kind of as this new technology came up. So Grand Theft Auto is probably one of the most recognizable examples of a game that really put music at its core. The fact that you could choose from dozens and to this day hundreds of songs to play from the radio station to your cars you're driving around, and they worked with labels like Epic Records to really build a following and a brand around their music, complementary to but separate from the game itself. You had certain games like AudioSurf, or also consoles like Microsoft's Xbox that allowed individual gamers and players to customize their soundtrack, something that actually continues to this day, especially in the streaming era. And then you had games like Guitar Hero, which were very music centric, but also ended up being some of the top selling games of the year, especially in 2007 and throughout the late 2010s as well. What is the kind of modern day landscape of these kinds of partnerships look like? So I think zooming out and looking at the gaming industry generally, we're at a really big inflection point because games, of course, have always been popular, but in terms of celebrities really leaning into gaming across different genres and really embracing it both as part of their marketing strategy and just like other personalities and who they are as human beings, it really is truly part of pop culture. You have politicians and public figures like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. You have artists like Drake and T-Pain openly playing games like Fortnite, Among Us, and even Animal Crossing, like a very wide range of games to engage with fans and build their audiences online. At the same time, what's super interesting kind of about the evolution of the music and gaming industries, at least in the past couple of decades in the 21st century, is that the video game industry has grown and profited off of digitization. That's a really stark contrast from the music business, which even today in 2021, there's still stories going back to like the rise of peer-to-peer file sharing services like Napster that led to like an aggregate 15-year decline in revenue for the music industry, that for the recorded music side at least, that did not start recovering until 2015. So I think we're really feeling, speaking from the music industry perspective, we're really feeling still like the residual impact of that, and then looking to other entertainment industries like gaming that have really and then looking to other looking to other industries like video gaming, for which this digital revolution has actually helped them, and are trying to ask questions like how do we collaborate more with those kinds of industries? How do we learn not just from our mistakes but also solutions that we've seen elsewhere? And so as the video game industry continues to grow in influence, continue to grow financially, so many different kinds of companies across the value chain in the gaming industry are trying to expand beyond their roots into full-fledged pop culture companies. So you see this not just at the developer level, where you have companies like Epic Games, which owns Fortnite, and Riot Games, which owns League of Legends, start their own music divisions, either release their own music or host concerts and music events in the case of Fortnite. So not just at the developer level, but also then at the kind of secondary social level, where social platforms like the live streaming platform Twitch and the kind of real-time chat app Discord, both of which started in the gaming industry and with like gaming specific use cases, have now certainly expanded far just beyond that to service social media influencers more broadly, especially musicians on Twitch, given the dramatic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and the fact that they're not able to tour. And so music is definitely part of this wave of gaming companies wanting to build a reputation as pop culture brands more broadly. What follows from that, kind of as I alluded to towards the beginning of this talk, is that the opportunities for the music industry to partner with gaming companies expands far beyond just soundtracks. It's not about just coding music into the sound chip in the game that will be the only way of delivering any kind of music to these gamers. You could treat the gaming industry as like an investment in talent, as the rapper Sway Lee, also other rappers like Offset have done with investing in esports leagues. You can pursue brand partnerships like Katy Perry being the new face of Pokemon. Whatever you think about the quote-unquote authenticity of that partnership, the fact that Katy Perry and recently it was announced Post Malone kind of joined that bandwagon of partnerships with Pokemon. It really is, a mass market mainstream pop culture brand now, not quote unquote just a game. We talked about in-game concerts in Fortnite, and this is just an example at the bottom of the artist Saweetie giving away a custom Xbox console to her fans. Again, maybe not expected from from that kind of artist, or like she historically had not done that many kind of gaming partnerships and endorsements, but now it's like really a hot ticket for any artist, especially looking to build a more mainstream audience. So yeah, to summarize, like from the music industry's perspective, what are they actually looking for from games, given this bigger opportunity landscape, right? It's not just about sync licenses or even blanket licenses with platforms like Twitch anymore. They're really looking for much more diversified and much more multimodal business models. And at the same time, thinking back to that graph that I showed a couple of slides ago about the contrast between the music and gaming industries in terms of the like value and revenue gap there, a lot of music companies, especially bigger, more established companies, are looking to build, own, and operate their own gaming ventures and platforms. So just very quickly, generally speaking, going through the traditional approach for a sync license. So say EA Sports, which owns the FIFA and Madden video game franchises, wants to license a song from Warner Music Group. How that relationship traditionally manifests is just with a simple flat fee. So normally, the label and the publisher receive a flat fee for the game, a flat fee from the game developer in exchange for a license in perpetuity to have that song be featured in the game. And that's really it. Like that was really the extent of the relationship. The game developer, EA Sports in this case, would go on to sell the game at around $60 a piece and make all of that revenue and profit, with none of that going back to the record label, no matter how important music was in the kind of development of that game. And this is true even for a franchise like Grand Theft Auto, which has music even more at the center. Those games are not generating royalties for the label or publisher. How the label or publisher stands to benefit in this case is that it's actually very similar to how labels like see TikTok. I don't think they necessarily expect to get a lot of money from TikTok, if anything. They're just hoping that kind of the follow-on consumption and follow-on interest in the artist that comes from playing the game will lead to more streams, more, back in the day, CD sales, vinyl record sales, etc. So any, promotional bump is really indirect, and this relationship is actually pretty limited just to a single licensing transaction. There are two emerging approaches that I'm seeing in terms of how this partnership can be much more integrated. So the first approach keeps the focus on the recorded music, so on the kind of master recording of the song itself. What's pictured here is just one of many volumes that the game Rocket League has released in collaboration with the indie electronic label and publisher called Monstercat. And I think this is an unconventional partnership because they really developed the soundtrack together in tandem in a very collaborative way from the very beginning, as opposed to trying to license a song towards the later stages of game development. All these sync licenses, unlike many other games, are also focused on emerging acts, many of whom may be undiscovered as of yet by the wider music industry. They may only have a couple of singles out. So like really treating the game as a vehicle for music discovery, and then not just licensing that song for the game, but also embedding licensing and that kind of partnership throughout Rocket League's, given that Rocket League now has a whole events business, they have a whole championship, being able to feature Monstercat artists and their songs at those kinds of, whether in-person or virtual events, can also be super powerful. So just thinking about licensing in a more integrated way. The kind of second emerging approach looks beyond the recording. And I think Travis Scott's recent show in Fortnite, you could also apply this to Marshmallow's show that I did in Fortnite a year prior. In terms of the business opportunities from the artist's perspective, it's far beyond just the recording. Yes, of course, the Travis Scott and or his label, Epic Records, they probably got some licensing fee from the game itself, which is standard as we went over in this licensing context. And that also, in this case, definitely helped with at least 25% increase in follow-on consumption on digital music streaming platforms like Spotify and Apple Music. But that's just really one element. As part of that concert, Travis Scott sold a lot of in-game, what some people call virtual goods, and what some other people also call like microtransactions. So you could buy like branded skins, branded outfits. You could buy like a bundle that included a certain like dance move even that was in the style of Travis Scott. So there, it's like also monetizing the visual brand and the personality around the artist as much as say just the song or the recording per se. So this is, I think this, while these kinds of opportunities are only available, of course, to a select few artists in kind of the top 1% of the industry, it presents a super holistic vision that I know artists kind of across the career spectrum are thinking about right now when approaching future gaming partnerships. Kind of on an industry level, this maybe is more relevant, actually is equally relevant at the individual and organizational level in the music industry. The shift as a result of this diversification from just flat sync licensing fees, blanket licensing fees, to a mindset of actually taking equity and genuine ownership of these ventures. I think we're only really seeing the early implications of what that means for what music is as a business, like what being an artist is as a business. We're seeing companies like Sony start entire divisions just dedicated to immersive music experiences. They're using Unreal, which is the same game creation engine that powers Fortnite and is also owned by Epic Games. But they're creating dedicated music experiences that they own and that they market themselves. We're seeing labels like Warner Music Group join quite big investment rounds in companies like Roblox, which is a more open social gaming platform. Will probably go public this year, which will create a pretty big windfall for Warner Music Group, I would imagine. But that kind of investment relationship was not very typical. Normally, it'd be more of just like a sync licensing relationship. And then, as I mentioned earlier, you have like individual rappers investing in the talent that's driving the popularity of esports and of video games generally, as opposed to kind of taking a backseat or treating it as a loss-leading promotional vehicle. And also, so I guess to this point, I've talked mostly about gaming as a business model, but in terms of emerging models moving forward, I would really like to see more artists use games, not just as a commercial outlet for maximizing profit. I think you can also run into a lot of roadblocks with that in the gaming community itself, because I feel like their BS detector and in turn their authenticity radar is super high, probably much more sensitive and aggressive than in the music industry. So when it comes to applications for music, important to keep in mind that gaming is not just a business model. It can also be a creative tool with adaptive music. It can also be a new place for socializing, what some cultural theorists have called the quote unquote virtual third place. And it can also be an outlet for showcasing different sides of yourself as an artist and as a human being. On the kind of creative tool front, I think it's so interesting that one of the I think most cutting edge, forward-thinking, innovative projects around creating games out of music creation, so creating game versions of albums or singles, was released almost 10 years ago. So the image on the left is of just one screenshot of Bjork's Biophilia, which is a standalone album. You can listen to it on Spotify, but it was primarily marketed as a selection of apps that kind of represented the stems behind the songs in the album as interactive environments you can play around with and kind of make and author your own music out of. I haven't really seen any similarly, imaginative and groundbreaking, versions of this, at least at the level and reach of someone like Bjork, making that the primary, marketing vehicle for their album. The one exception, but it hasn't really had that much reach, is on the right. This is a screenshot from Sigur Ros's partnership with Magic Leap. He made a mixed reality version of both original music and pre-recorded music from his catalog that fans could interact with more in mixed reality rather than on a mobile phone. So I really hope to see more of those kinds of examples moving forward. Another kind of trend that I'm seeing in the industry more on the social side of gaming is that a lot of music brands, especially music tech brands, are positioning themselves as fast track options to starting to monetize and build a business on Twitch. This can be very controversial sometimes, especially in the independent artist community. Some people can interpret this as kind of a pay to play ecosystem where you won't have as high of a chance of becoming a Twitch partner unless you pay for SoundCloud Pro or you pay for Monstercat's Gold subscription service. So there's definitely debate around kind of the ethics of this approach, but the fact that all of these kind of fast track initiatives were announced in the last year, especially in the context of the pandemic, just goes to show how top of mind live streaming platforms like Twitch that were gaming centric, how top of mind those are now for musicians and for other kinds of artists online. And just to highlight a couple of examples from games as lifestyle brands. Here, just a few examples pictured here. So on the left is a screenshot of BTS World, which is a mobile game where you can manage each member of the band, bring them through the training process. You can bring them on tour, and you're kind of like scored along the way. So it simulates the artist management experience in this very kind of parasocial way, and also in a way that's not necessarily tied to the music itself. It's like tied to building some semblance of a connection with the with the artists and with the group members themselves. On the top right, you have I think one of the most successful artist-led mobile games recently, very on brand, called Wiz Khalifa's Weed Farm. It's made at least low seven figures in revenue, and it wasn't developed with any kind of major developer. I'm pretty sure it's just him and his label and an independent developer kind of building it. And again, not really tied to any album release. It's just Wiz being Wiz and allowing fans to kind of take part in that ethos around him. And actually, just this week, it was announced that, I guess as of recording this, so in mid-February, Megan Thee Stallion, the rapper, is going to be broadcasting herself playing Mortal Kombat, along with other kind of artists and esports influencers on Twitch. And she's a part of Mortal Kombat's commercials, playing the role of the recurring character Melina. And again, it's not something tied to her music. It's just more tied to her personality and her interests. And that is definitely authentic because she's posted a lot about how she's into anime and games on her social profiles. So there's a ton of opportunity. I think the main challenges in these newer forms of music and gaming partnerships can be boiled down to the question of whether we can teach an old dog new tricks. So I think there are kind of two sub-strands of this. The biggest one, since we're talking about music, being, of course, licensing. I think with any new technology that comes up, you're going to run into a roadblock with trying to impose legacy models of copyright and IP monetization in music onto these newer technologies that maybe just operate in a fundamentally different way. Actually, I guess an issue that the likes of Twitch are facing around DMCA takedowns, that certainly is not new. It's something that the likes of YouTube and SoundCloud have also faced kind of in their earlier years. And just because gaming is very fast moving and very tech centric doesn't make them an exception to this rule. So Twitch is still getting at least as of recording this, thousands of DMCA takedown notices every week. And creators feel like they're frankly getting screwed over because there's not that much transparency about what music can or cannot be used in their gaming streams. Below are just two examples of the potential solutions. So I mentioned Monstercat Gold, which allows you to access any of their the songs on their catalog, or like 99.9% of the songs on their catalog, without having to fear getting taken down. That costs $5 a month. T-Pain released his own royalty-free beat pack that's also takedown free, called the Pizzle Pack. But artists and labels have really had to go out of their way to make these options available, which is definitely not the most scalable or efficient solution, arguably. Got a final challenge in this in this concept of teaching old dog new tricks is just encouraging the gaming industry, and especially more established gaming franchises and developers, to think beyond just celebrity marketing, their music partnerships. So, Epic Games, understandably, with Fortnite, is only really looking to partner with artists with established audiences that most of the time has meant artists signed to major labels. So Travis Scott, BTS, Anderson .Paak, etc. If you look at the artists featured in Grand Theft Auto or kind of a lot of these sports games franchises that I mentioned earlier, definitely mostly celebrity driven. And I've heard the phrase thrown around a lot in the media, are video games the future of concerts? Are video games the future of the music industry, in and of itself? I think that's possible, but in order for that to be true, it really has to be able to serve everybody. And what I'm really seeing a gap in the market of, gaming partnership opportunities and solutions that are accessible to, let alone, appropriate and applicable for emerging artists. Pictured here is one of many festivals that have taken place in the game Minecraft. And the reason why so many festivals have kind of chosen Minecraft as their game of choice is because anyone can make their own server, anyone can invite people to join the server, anyone can build their own world in any way they please. So there's a lot of customizability that I really have yet to see elsewhere in the gaming world. I think social platforms or social game creation platforms like Roblox could also potentially fit this role. So hopefully we'll see more positive evolution in that direction. To kind of close this out and tie it back to the beginning. So I mentioned that, the history of video gaming is inseparable from computing and then from the history of music. You can say the same thing about the future. Hopefully that kind of historical context and overview of recent case studies showed you how, trends in computing are driving both video games and music, and how, we think about creativity and art, let alone the commercial opportunity around it in both of those industries. And then kind of the immense opportunity, I think, in having those two worlds and approaches work more together. If you're interested in diving into any more of these strands that I discussed, I would love to hear from you and get in touch. Social media-wise, probably the best platform for me is Twitter. You can follow me there at SherryHugh42. I've also included my email here, sherry@waterandmusic.com. And here are some links as well where you can check out my personal website where I have my freelance portfolio, as well as the Water and Music newsletter will be where we discuss a lot of trends across music and tech with a similar kind of depth and look at kind of the system and the industry as a whole, including but not limited to gaming. Yeah, thank you all so much and hope you have a great day.